I think is the most bullish things for MSPs is it takes FUD out of the game, right? There's no such thing as FUD anymore. We're going right to the end result. You're owned.
Yeah, they'll attach a value to FUD on their own. You don't need to.
Yeah, it's great. Wes, any thoughts or
I do love that comment you made. It kind of made my brain go pow for a second of it takes FUD out of the game, right? As vendors, our marketing teams are always trying to think through, what's that one thing that we can say, that tagline or catchphrase that's going to get people to want to invest. And I think that I love that idea of saying when we jump right into that assume breach mentality, it forces us to change into bypassing all the things that are going to happen and say, what would we do and how would we react and where and how would we recover and what are the critical pieces of things that we have to consider inside of all of it. And, Gary, I can just see myself if I'm an MSP sitting down with a client and saying, hey, did you see what happened with the SolarWinds stuff? And regardless of whether they say yes or no, you can say, there's some interesting things that came out of that, Gary. And it really got us thinking as an MSP. Here we are today thinking, wow, some of the biggest organizations that are out there, including cybersecurity organizations that are really well known and publicly traded, got significantly hit. And Gary, there's really not anything that they could have done about it. When you get hit with a software provider that you're leveraging, that there's malware inside of their own software that gets delivered to us, it's impossible to see that. It's impossible to prevent that. It's impossible, largely speaking, to have detected that. We've really got to operate, Mr. Client, or Gary, you're my client. We've got to shift into how are we going to respond when that happens? And so that's caused our MSP to start thinking about things like, Gary, what kind of data do you have? Where does it exist? How would we recover it? Who would we notify when that happens? What would be the processes? Do you know how to get in touch with us? How would we get in touch with you at 2 a.m. when we saw something like this happen? And what would be the steps of recovery? And when would we get regulators involved or federal or state agencies involved? And you start having these conversations like this, and it forces them into that end game of what do we do about all of that and how would we react and recover? That is a valuable conversation to get a client thinking about.